Hello and welcome to Centurion's Corner, and today we're going to be touching up Aayla Secura. So first of all, we're going to apply a wash to Aayla Secura, and with that we're going to use the buff paint from Secura. We're using the Gentle Giant bust here as a kind of bit of reference, and what I'm going to do is just apply it over the vest part. Don't go over the other part because that is pure leather. We're just going to go around these parts here. If you just copy me, you'll be fine. We're not going to wipe it off either. We're just going to make it really watery so it just seeps into all those sort of crevices and creases into that top, because it needs to be on the underside of it. Carry on with the wash over the shoulder and around the back, and also don't forget the arm as well. So with a little bit of magenta paint here, I'm going to apply to her lips just to bring a little bit of life into that lifeless face. Now I'm just using NATO Brown, and we're going to apply that as a wash again because we don't want it to be too bright or glossy. We just want a little matte look over the top of it, just over the tabard on the front and back of that leather part. Using a bit of flat black, we're just going to apply to a covert tip that actually keeps the lightsaber attached to her belt. Using buff again, not as so much watered down, just a little bit, and we're going to apply to those kind of string parts that she has hanging down the side of her belt. So now we're going to go back to our NATO Brown, but this time we're going to dry wash her top rather than wash it down. So we're just going to skim it over the top, and hopefully it will attach onto the actual tops of the top and leaving the light brown situated into the cracks underneath. With this, sometimes it's easier to just build it up, so just have a very slight part of paint on the top and make sure that you don't go in the same way as the main lines, and keep it quite light and brush not as firmly, because you just want to skim it over the top. So now using this blue, I've watered it down again, and if you look into the ear parts, she's got these little creases around. I kind of want it added a little bit of depth and a little bit of shadow, so I've applied it around those ear horns that she has, and also around on the ribbon, so it kind of looks like the ribbon is kind of sort of pushing into the leku slightly, rather than sort of just kind of looking like brown paint that's just painted on top. Also using the brown, I've used it in quite a few crevices around on the leku, so as the creases fold, you've got that little bump bit in the middle of her head. I've also applied blue to that as well. Don't worry about if you make it too thick, because you can go back at it with a toothpick as well. Next up, we're going to do a black wash over the top of the leather part of her vest. So just put it around, use a sponge or a towel just to wipe it down, but you want to keep it a little bit darker as well, so you don't want to wipe it too much away. And then also after that, we'll do the black wash over the whole entire belt, but add in a little bit more black on the actual tabard as well. And as you can see, just finishing it off here, as in putting on these extra details, extra washes, extra dry brushing as well. It really brings out your figure and it makes it feel like what you should have purchased in the original place. So stay tuned and we'll be back at the end of the video to have another overhaul look at the paints that I've used and a closer look at Aayla Secura now. So for a little bit more detail as well to the Leku, I'm just adding a little bit of white with the blue and making it a bit of a baby white, so you kind of like adding little freckles all over the top. It just adds that little bit of depth, a little bit more sort of skin complexion to it, and I think, to be honest, it's one of the things that finishes off the figure. So here she is, all finished and done, and I think, to be honest, she actually adds a little bit of zest to the character. She was really lacking detail straight from the outset, from getting out of the box. You could really tell that drab that Hasbro seem to be using at the moment on their browns, it just looks awful. I mean, just having added a black wash there on just the natural colour, it just brings out that leatherette like completely. So we haven't really used many materials or many paints on this figure at all, but the main one that we have used here is probably the buff, which is from the Tamura XF57. So we actually use this as the watered down paint for actually applying over her top, or the vest part underneath. So I used this part here as reference. There's loads of pictures on the Instagram as well, so obviously the undercolour here. Using that on top, then we dried brush over the top with XF68 just over the top to get that sort of pattern back over the top without actually going back into the crevices where we put the buff. And then using that paint again on the little tabard areas down here, and using the buff once again on these sort of like lines down here, with a little wash on those as well. So really there's only extra 2 browns there that we just added to the figure, and it brings it up tenfold. With the black, we actually added to her kind of clip here that we've added to the actual belt itself. Again, adds that extra little tiny little detail, and then use that black as well as a wash over the top of all this sort of leather parts on here and around on the head, and it just brings out that detail. Look how incredible it is, and it looks great. Now you could finish there if you wanted, and obviously I did actually add a few extra paints in certain areas. So I just used this kind of sort of like pinky red here, this magenta just on the lips, because she doesn't really have, she has quite sort of potent lips really, like they're always kind of like purpley and stuff like that in all the pictures. So I've just, or even red, so I've just added that there for a little bit of detail on that part. With the blue, I just added in sort of shading in certain areas. I just thought it'd be quite nice because a lot of them, they have creases and folds and stuff over the top, so I just added it in. I have since the painting as well, I have used like a cocktail stick before sealing it. I've actually made them a little bit thinner so they weren't so as potent as well on there. And then combining with that blue and this white, we've just added in just a little couple of little spots there on the Leku. She don't always have these white spots. I always thought she did, but looking at references she hasn't, and she has, so I used it very subtly. So from a distance they don't really look like they're there, but they're just enough, like when you get close you can actually see the details in there. So yeah, I think it just adds that extra detail to the actual figure itself. Since then as well, I've used some glue just underneath the tabard here, so it actually holds down the belt, so it's just on the back, so these bits is not going to move anytime soon. And then also I have used a matte spray as well over the top of it, just to keep that paint in check. So yeah, she ain't going anywhere, and this is her new look. So I think you would agree with me that she looks a lot better now. This is the way it should have came out, at least out of the packaging, especially when they do the vintage collections as well with extra paint apps and stuff on there. She looks good, and actually she looks more in line with this Gentle Giant kind of part here. I've actually got an Aayla Secura lightsaber and a few other Aayla Securas here, because she is actually one of my favourite Jedis. The only thing I would say, since the review, her ankles have gone a bit weak. They are a little bit loose down here. And I actually, just while we got you here, there is actually butterfly joints in there. She's actually got that extra bit of plastic, which I didn't really realise in the review, but she doesn't use them. They slightly move, but not enough to actually warrant a butterfly joint in there. So yeah, it is a shame that they're not really sort of overused on there. So thank you so much for joining me in this one. Let me know in the comments down below what other figures you'd like to be upgrading. Hopefully I will be bringing out a few this week, and yes, they will be Boba Fett's. But what about some older figures? Are there other older figures that you want me to have a look at? Let me know in the comments down below. You can subscribe, ding that bell, follow me on Instagram, it's in the description down below, and I'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye.